January 17, 1940. The forests of the Siegfried Line stand frozen beneath a gray winter sky. German soldiers crouch in concrete bunkers reinforced with steel and certainty, their breath forming small clouds in the cold air. They clean their rifles with methodical precision, check ammunition stores that seem adequate, perhaps even generous. Outside, the wind carries the scent of pine and gunpowder residue from morning drills. These men have been told they are invincible, that their factories back home churn out weapons faster than any nation on earth, that the Allies, soft, decadent, unwilling to sacrifice, will crumble before the year ends. In these moments, wrapped in wool coats and the warmth of propaganda, they believe it. They have every reason to believe it. Germany, in early 1940, stands as the industrial heartland of a reborn empire. Since 1933, the Reich has transformed itself from a defeated nation, strangled by Versailles, into a military colossus. Steel production has tripled. Aircraft factories operate in shifts around the clock. Panzer divisions roll off assembly lines in numbers that astound foreign observers. The men in those bunkers know these facts intimately. They've seen the newsreels, heard the speeches, witnessed the material proof of German industrial might. When they look at France, they see a nation still clinging to outdated fortifications and defensive thinking. When they consider Britain, they see an island kingdom stretched thin across a dying empire, unable to feed itself without merchant convoys. And America? America remains an ocean away, mired in neutrality, its army ranking 18th in the world, smaller than Portugal's, equipped with weapons from the last war. The mathematical logic seems irrefutable. Germany controls the industrial heartland of continental Europe. The Ruhr Valley produces more coal and steel than Britain and France combined. Captured Czechoslovakian factories add their output to the Reich's growing arsenal. Every economic indicator, every production chart, every resource calculation points toward the same conclusion. Germany can outproduce, outlast, and overwhelm any coalition foolish enough to challenge it. The soldiers cleaning their rifles in January 1940 carry this knowledge like armor. They expect a short war. They expect deprivation among their enemies. They expect to be home by Christmas, victorious, having proven that will and organization triumph over the soft democracies of the West. But standing in a Detroit factory that same January morning, reality takes a different form. The River Rouge complex stretches across 2,000 acres, a cathedral of American industry where raw materials enter one end and finished automobiles emerge from the other. Here, Henry Ford has perfected something the world has never seen, true mass production at a scale that defies comprehension. Conveyor belts move with hypnotic rhythm. Stamping machines thunder in precise intervals. Every 7 seconds, a new car frame takes shape. The workers here don't see themselves as soldiers in an industrial war, but they move with the efficiency of an army that doesn't know it's mobilizing. The smell of hot metal and machine oil fills air thick with possibility. This is not a war economy, not yet. This is simply Tuesday in America, and already it produces more in a single shift than entire German factories manage in a week. The numbers tell a story that German intelligence officers in 1940 cannot fully grasp, perhaps cannot allow themselves to believe. American automobile production in 1939 reached 2.8 million vehicles. The Reich's entire automotive industry produced 276,000. American steel output topped 47 million tons. Germany managed 23 million, and that included every captured facility in Austria and Czechoslovakia. But these are peacetime numbers, the baseline of an economy not yet committed to war, not yet angry, not yet fully awakened to its own potential. When France falls in June 1940, the Wehrmacht celebrates in Paris.
Soldiers pose for photographs beneath the Arc de Triomphe, convinced now more than ever that their industrial supremacy has been validated by battlefield victory. They have crushed the French army in 6 weeks, expelled British forces from the continent, secured resources from Norway to the Pyrenees. Captured French factories will add to German production capacity. Seized stockpiles will supply the Wehrmacht for years. The war, for all practical purposes, appears won. What the celebrating soldiers cannot see, cannot imagine in their moment of triumph, is that thousands of miles away, American industry has begun to stir. President Roosevelt asks Congress for 50,000 aircraft. 50,000! The number sounds absurd even to American industrialists. The entire U.S. Army Air Corps in 1940 possesses fewer than 3,000 planes, many of them obsolete. Germany's Luftwaffe, the most powerful air force on Earth, fields approximately 4,000 combat aircraft. Roosevelt isn't asking for parity, he isn't asking for superiority. He's asking for a number so large it seems disconnected from reality. And American industry responds not with skepticism, but with calculation. William Knudsen, president of General Motors, receives a call from the White House. Within weeks, he stands in Washington as director of the Office of Production Management, tasked with transforming American industrial might into an arsenal for democracy. The automobile factories of Detroit, the shipyards of California, the steel mills of Pittsburgh, all of it will be turned toward a single purpose. But this transformation won't require the brutal coercion of a totalitarian state. It won't demand the sacrifice of butter for guns, because America, in its vast abundance, will produce both. By December 1941, when Japanese bombs fall on Pearl Harbor and Germany declares war on the United States, the German High Command still clings to their calculations. They have studied American potential and dismissed it. Yes, America possesses factories, but factories require skilled workers, and Americans are soft, undisciplined. Yes, America has resources, but resources scattered across a continent require coordination, and democracies cannot coordinate efficiently. Yes, America can produce consumer goods, but converting civilian production to military output takes years, and the war will be over long before American industry reaches full capacity. Every assumption proves catastrophically wrong. The symbolic object of this miscalculation becomes the Liberty ship, a cargo vessel so simple, so standardized, so efficiently produced that it rewrites the rules of maritime warfare. German U-boats sink Allied shipping faster than British yards can replace it. This is mathematical certainty. Admiral Karl Dönitz calculates that sinking 700,000 tons per month will strangle Britain into submission. His submarines achieve this rate and exceed it. British shipyards, working at maximum capacity, launch perhaps a dozen new vessels per month. Victory through attrition seems assured.
Then, American shipyards enter the war. Henry Kaiser, a construction magnate with no shipbuilding experience, applies assembly line principles to an industry that has built vessels one at a time for centuries. The first Liberty ship takes 244 days to complete. The methods improve. Prefabrication begins, welding replaces riveting, workers specialize in single tasks repeated thousands of times. Within a year, Kaiser's yards launch a Liberty ship in 42 days. The record falls to 27 days, then to 14. In November 1942, the Robert V. Peary slides into the water just 4 days and 15 hours after its keel was laid. 4 days. German intelligence officers reading this report assume it's propaganda, impossible, a lie designed to boost Allied morale. But the ships keep coming. In 1942, American yards launched 746 vessels, totaling 5.2 million tons. In 1943, that number rises to 1,896 ships, totaling 12.8 million tons.
The U-boats sink more tonnage than ever before, and still Allied shipping capacity grows. For every merchant vessel sent to the bottom, 3 more slide down American launching ways. The mathematics of attrition, so carefully calculated by German naval strategists, collapse beneath the weight of American production. The ocean itself seems to fill with ships, endless, inexhaustible, each one carrying the message that this war will not be won by those who can endure deprivation, but by those who can produce abundance. On the Eastern Front, German soldiers encounter another symbol of American industrial power, the humble tin of Spam. Soviet troops receive millions of pounds of processed meat from America, along with trucks, boots, locomotives, telephone wire, and high-octane aviation fuel. Nikita Khrushchev will later write, "Without Spam, we wouldn't have been able to feed our army." The Wehrmacht, fighting desperately in the frozen hell of Stalingrad, subsists on reduced rations while their enemies eat American food delivered in American trucks, burning American gasoline. The ideological certainty begins to crack. These are not the starving, desperate hordes Nazi propaganda promised. These are well-fed soldiers supported by an industrial base that seems to have no limit. By 1943, the illusion has shattered completely, though many German commanders cannot accept it. American factories produce 85,000 aircraft that year. The entire German aviation industry, straining at maximum effort, produces 25,000. American shipyards launch a warship every day and a merchant vessel every 8 hours. American steel mills pour forth 80 million tons. American farms, worked by a fraction of their population, produce food surpluses so vast that feeding Allied armies becomes routine. A single Ford plant at Willow Run produces B-24 bombers at a rate of 1 per hour, 24 hours a day, every day. The building itself stretches over 3.5 million square feet, the largest room under one roof on Earth, a space so enormous that workers use bicycles to travel between stations. German soldiers in bunkers along the Atlantic Wall in 1944 hear a sound that changes their understanding of the war. It starts as a distant hum, like insects on a summer day. Then it grows, deepens, becomes a rhythmic thunder that shakes the concrete beneath their feet. They emerge to see the sky filled with American bombers, hundreds of them, flying in formation so precise and massive it seems to blot out the sun. B-17s, B-24s, each one a 4-engine fortress carrying tons of high explosives, each one representing 20,000 man-hours of labor, each one a small fraction of the monthly output from American factories. The fighters escorting them, P-51 Mustangs, P-47 Thunderbolts, fly on fuel refined in Texas and Oklahoma, drop auxiliary tanks manufactured in a dozen different states, represent an industrial coordination that totalitarian control cannot match.
The soldiers watch this armada pass overhead and understand something their leaders refuse to accept. They are not fighting an enemy nation, they are fighting an enemy economy. And that economy has mobilized resources on a scale human civilization has never before achieved. Every bomb that falls, every fighter that dives, every tank that rumbles ashore represents not desperation or final effort, but casual abundance. America can afford to lose 1,000 aircraft and replace them within weeks. America can afford to scrap weapon designs that Germany would consider priceless and start over with better models. America wages war the way it built cars in peacetime, with overwhelming standardization, massive production runs, and the quiet confidence of unlimited potential. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister, will write after the war of his growing despair as German production peaked in 1944 at levels America had surpassed 2 years earlier. He describes visiting factories bombed into rubble, watching workers struggle to maintain output with equipment starved for raw materials, seeing the impossibility of the situation with clear eyes, while his Führer demands miracles. The German war economy, mobilized for total war since 1939, operating at absolute maximum capacity, never produces more than a fraction of American output. And America, even at full wartime production, never requires its citizens to sacrifice consumer goods entirely. The lights stay on, the food remains plentiful, the shops don't empty. Democracy at war proves more efficient than tyranny at full mobilization. In the final months, as Allied armies close on Germany from east and west, German soldiers surrender with stories of abundance that sound like myths. They speak of American field kitchens serving fresh bread and real coffee. They describe supply depots stocked with enough equipment to outfit entire divisions. They marvel at American soldiers who throw away cigarettes after smoking half, who complain about food that German troops would consider luxury, who seem unaware that war is supposed to mean sacrifice and deprivation. One captured officer writes in his diary about watching American engineers build a bridge in 48 hours, using prefabricated steel sections shipped from Pittsburgh, employing methods and materials that would have taken German pioneers 2 weeks to replicate. The transformation of perception is complete. What began as certainty about German industrial supremacy, about the weakness of democracy, about the inevitability of victory through superior organization, ends in the ruins of that certainty. The soldiers who believed they would outlast the Allies discovered they were trying to outlast a nation that didn't know how to think in terms of scarcity, that approached war the same way it approached peacetime production, with massive scale, brutal efficiency, and the casual assumption that anything worth doing was worth doing in overwhelming numbers.
The symbolic Liberty ship becomes, in the end, a monument to this reality. Nearly 3,000 of them were built, each one a refutation of the idea that democracies cannot organize, cannot sacrifice, cannot match the productive efficiency of totalitarian control. They sailed into every theater of war carrying tanks, trucks, aircraft, food, medicine, ammunition, the physical manifestation of American industrial power. Many were sunk. Many more survived. Some sailed into the 1960s, still carrying cargo, still functional, still serving as a reminder that the war was won not primarily through valor or tactics or even technology, but through the simple, devastating application of productive capacity that the other side could never hope to match. In the quiet years after, historians would calculate the ratios. For every German tank, America produced 5 Shermans. For every German aircraft, America produced 3. For every German ship, America produced 10. But numbers alone cannot capture the psychological transformation, the moment when certainty becomes doubt, when propaganda meets reality, when soldiers raised on stories of Aryan superiority and inevitable triumph begin to understand that they are drowning in an ocean of American production, and that ocean has no shore. The bunker where this story began, abandoned now, empty of soldiers and certainty alike, stands as a monument to miscalculation. The men who cleaned their rifles there in January 1940 expected deprivation among their enemies. They expected to outlast nations they believed too soft, too democratic, too divided to sustain industrial warfare. They could not imagine a nation that would produce both bombers and automobiles, that would feed its allies while feeding itself, that would turn the machinery of peacetime abundance into an arsenal of such overwhelming scale that victory became not a question of if, but merely when. The deepest truth lies not in production numbers or economic statistics, but in the fundamental miscalculation about what free people can accomplish when their prosperity is threatened, when their values are challenged, when their way of life demands defense. The Reich bet everything on the assumption that totalitarian control produces superior efficiency, that democracies fracture under pressure, that abundance makes nations weak. Every assumption proved false. The assembly lines that built cars in Detroit built bombers with equal efficiency. The farms that produced surplus in peacetime fed armies across 3 continents. The workers who seemed disunderplaned and individualistic coordinated their efforts with a precision that surprised even themselves. In the end, the Germans didn't just lose a war of production, they lost a war of ideology, a fundamental contest between systems of organizing human effort and economic power. The nation that believed it would outlast all others through superior will and organization discovered too late that it had challenged an economic system built on abundance, innovation, and the productive power of free people pursuing their own prosperity. That system, when finally mobilized toward a single purpose, proved unstoppable not through coercion but through coordination, not through sacrifice but through transformation, not through grinding endurance but through overwhelming, inexhaustible, devastating productivity. The Liberty ships sailed on, the factories kept producing, and the certainty that seemed so solid in that frozen bunker in January 1940 dissolved like smoke before the steel reality of American industrial might, leaving behind only the lesson that wars are won not by those who can endure the most, but by those who can produce the most, and that free people, given cause and purpose, can outproduce any tyranny the world has ever known.